And it affords a lot of respect to your audience too, to be like, I believe in you, I believe you can figure out what's happening as this movie goes on, and I believe in your attention span, that you're gonna stick with this film. Hey everybody, my name is Nick. I'm a director and editor, and today I'm gonna be talking about the Edward Yang film, A Confucian Confusion. So this film, A Confucian Confusion, reinforced two through lines that I've noticed with Edward Yang's work. The first thing that I noticed in Edward Yang's work is that at the very beginning of the pieces, they often feel messy. And every time I watch an Edward Yang film, I always think, okay, this is the one that I'm gonna not like. I talked about it a little bit with Taipei Story. I think I brought it up in a lot of my other reviews of his films. But every time I see his films, I'm thinking like, I'm a little confused, I don't follow things, I don't know what's going on, I think, what is the point of this movie? And I feel that this is because Edward Yang doesn't really indulge in exposition in a trite or false way. And I think that's actually a very good quality of him. I think it's one of his best qualities as a director. He brings in all these characters. You're in the situation as it begins. There's a lot of realism to this approach. You know, you don't have people explaining who characters are. The characters are just there and they reference them as somebody would in a conversation. And it's up to you as the movie goes on to kind of figure out who's who. Very early on in the film, they're mentioning somebody who wrote a book, and I had no idea who it was. And it wasn't until like the middle of the film that I realized it was like the ex-husband of one of the characters, and oh, that's who that is. That guy was the author that they were talking about. And I admire that quality because it's very gutsy thing to do, and it affords a lot of respect to your audience too, to be like, I believe in you, I believe you can figure out what's happening as this movie goes on, and I believe in your attention span, that you're gonna stick with this film and watch it long enough to be able to figure out the characters and figure out the plot. So as this movie goes on, what you realize is that this film is basically just about a lot of upper middle class people who are all trying to do what's best for themselves in love and business. There's a lot of discussion between them about the right way to behave and the best way to get what you want. There's a lot of cynicism within this group of people who are, for the most part, in agreement that doing whatever you can to get your way, including using emotion to trick people, is okay to do. There's some kind of talk and connection to Confucian ideals that I would like to delve a little bit deeper into, perhaps on a rewatch, and study a little bit about what exactly is the kind of Confucian aspect to this, but it's not really necessary to understand the broader points that Edward Yang is making. There's also kind of an explicitly stated metaphor within this movie to Chinese and Taiwanese cross-strait relations, although I don't really want to get too deep into that or analyze it that much anymore because this film was made in 1994, so I think a lot of the insights in that regard and the metaphors in that regard are going to be fairly dated. Like the situation, while broadly the same as it was in 1994, is a little bit different because a lot of what they're talking about is like emotions and the way that people feel towards the situation, which is, I think, vastly different now. So in addition to like the clarity of the plot being made more clear as the film goes on, I think the themes gradually become more clear and the shooting style and kind of the beauty of this film becomes more clear. This movie, I believe, was an attempt for Edward Yang to create a popular film. As a result, the cinematography is a lot safer, quote unquote, than a lot of his other films. There's a lot more of this film that is shot in mid-shots. Everything is much closer. You can see a lot of facial expressions and reactions, more so than some of his later work like EE, for example, which has a lot of those wide shots, is very artsy right from the jump. This kind of starts out as a kind of very standard fare in terms of like how the movie is shot. But as the movie goes on, you end up picking out all these beautiful, meticulous compositions that Edward Yang is so famous for. I mean, there's one particular scene at the end where two characters are having a conversation completely in darkness and they're backlit, and it is, I would say, one of the most beautiful shots I've seen in an Edward Yang film. It's amazing, it's gorgeous, and it comes in this kind of supposedly superficial romance film that he made, comedy romance, that he made as mainstream appeal. I think Edward Yang has a hard time suppressing his artistic tendencies. And that comes through in the themes of this movie too. I mean, the movie starts out and it's about these upper middle class people and their struggles with love. And as I was watching it, I'm like, do I really care about this movie? What kind of deep things and ideals am I going to get about these people who work in this advertising agency, and they're talking about their petty kind of grievances with, marrying the wrong person or getting the most money out of stuff. It's very connected to, in a lot of ways, like a Korean drama. It's kind of a precursor to a Korean drama. But in classic Edward Young fashion, as the movie develops, these really deep, kind of profound ideals about life and the way that humans interact emerge and present themselves if you're paying attention. So this movie that is supposed to be this kind of meaningless romance film that is created as a crowd pleaser ends up becoming a commentary itself on the idea of creating romances. It ends up talking about emotions and how we use them as tools to manipulate people, and whether that our kind of media portrayals of that with the author who wrote these romances and feels bad about it are contributing to the use of emotions as manipulation tools. And then, because everybody is utilizing emotions to manipulate each other, then this breeds this idea of distrust within everyone, so that a true emotion can't get through. The character of Chi-Chi is a very genuine person, but because she's genuine, everybody ends up thinking that she's trying to trick them. So by being genuine, people distrust her because they're so used to being tricked through emotion. And Edward Young himself struggling with, I think, how to utilize emotion in art in a way that is true and authentic. There's a prominent character of an artist who is a total charlatan, and I wonder if Edward Young is putting himself in that role and being like, is this who I am? Am I just a fake? I think he maybe is struggling with a little bit of imposter syndrome, because the character of the author is also very upset with how his work is used and can't really figure out a way to create something authentic anymore. And this goes into the second thing that I found to be true about all of Edward Young's work, is that Edward Young is both extremely cynical and extremely hopeful. He's very cynical about the ways that people manipulate each other. He is very cynical about the fact that his genuine feelings are going to be misunderstood, and so why should they even be presented as such? If everybody's manipulating, why shouldn't I just manipulate? But also, if I don't manipulate, are people going to believe that I'm not manipulating? Like, he's very cynical about the ways in which humans interact with each other. But in his work, as it goes on, the final kind of consensus that he comes to is often that no, genuine emotions are the only thing that is going to get us out of this trap of trying to trick each other or not believing each other or whatever. You just have to take the risk of being the genuine person. You see this as a recurrent theme in so many of Edward Young's films. And I think that what I found in watching all of his work is that, and especially this one, is that for Edward Young, he is in the process of kind of convincing himself to not be cynical. I think his natural skepticism and state is to want to be cynical about humans and the way that we interact, and his experiences probably have given him that perspective, but he wants to convince himself through art, through the creation of his art, that being genuine and putting yourself out there and trying to form genuine connections with people is the thing that is going to save our society and create meaning in our lives. I mean, I think that the themes in this are very similar to Mahjong in particular. And like Mahjong, this film has some particularly bad acting in it. I think it's the reason that this film and Mahjong are the least screened and the least kind of prestigious, quote unquote, because they are more in the comedy realm. They're less in the drama, serious realm, which I think Edward Young is better at. I think the comedy parts of it, this film isn't really particularly funny, even though I do find it to be fairly profound and very touching. I just think he kind of misses the mark when he's directing actors in a comedy way. I also think that he cast people that aren't as good of actors because he was trying to make a comedy. And I believe, I hate to say bad things about Edward Young, but I believe that as a director, his least skilled aspect is directing actors. I think that he is fortunate in films like E.E. and A Brighter Summer Day to have really talented actors who are able to just kind of execute. And his real skill is in constructing these complex films in interesting ways, in directing the camera and the technical aspects, and also just kind of story construction and like really pulling something together and editing out this like very polished, like thematically strong work. But certain acting segments, I don't know if he is paying as much attention to it. I think he just kind of, this may be blasphemy, but I think he might have just got lucky with E.E. to have like Wu Jianyan or some of these powerhouse actors in his films like E.E. and Brighter Summer Day. And when he has a really bad actor like in Mahjong, which is like the worst actor I've ever seen in my entire life, he's not able to pull that out. Now, that could just be that nobody could have fixed that, You give, who's a great, like Cassavetes, that guy in Mahjong, and I don't think Cassavetes is getting a good performance out of that guy. So, it is what it is. There's just some bad acting, like particularly like the character of Birdie is pretty annoying. The character, even the author, his kind of final rant about like love and stuff, which is an important rant that he's making, he doesn't deliver it all that well. It kind of feels a little silly. So I think that Edward Young's one kind of failing sometimes is that he doesn't get his actors to give real performances in these films, particular Confucian Confusion and Mahjong. What is the final third thing that I found not to be true in this film, but I did notice in all of the other Edward Young films that I've seen? Well, at the end, no one dies. I always thought it was a constant in his work that somebody would die at the end, but the ending of this one is a little different, and it was different in a way that I really appreciated and I really liked. I don't want to spoil the ending of this film because I really want you to go watch it. The ending of this film really surprised me in his execution. The way that he was able to build up suspense and create this kind of wonderful little cute romance at the end was something that I thought was so wonderful. And I believe that that final scene that happens in the elevator is something that should be studied by filmmakers and students far and wide, because it's such a great execution of the genre, but within his style. It's romance at its best. That's what Edward Young has done with this film. He's created a very touching romantic ending to his film that made me smile and feel good as it was supposed to do, but he did it in his way. He did end up making, with a Confucian Confusion, I believe, a crowd-pleasing romance, but he did it while also commentating on the idea of a crowd-pleasing romance, commentating on the emotions involved in romance and whether or not people can be genuine in romance, and like really delving deep into this stuff that doesn't happen oftentimes in these kind of K-dramas or romantic films or romantic comedies. Like, he did that. He commented on all of it, and he was still able to execute the final moment that made you feel the thing you're supposed to feel, which is like, oh, love is great. I mean, that's skill. So I think, for nothing else, I think this movie is actually a really, really good, excellent film. And I was very surprised at how much I liked at the end, given that at the beginning, I was pretty much not on board with it and thinking, okay, I think this is just going to be the first Edward Young film that I don't really like that much. Yeah, I still stand by the fact that I think Mahjong is his quote-unquote worst film. I think this is a little better. This is his second. But, Edward Young, he's just a great director, and I would say definitely check this movie out. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you like a Confucian Confusion? Somebody else commented that they think this is his worst film. I don't know. I stand by that. I think it's Mahjong. So what do you think? What's your favorite Edward Young film? What's your least favorite? Do you like this movie? Do you like him as a director? What are some things about Edward Young that you noticed? Leave them in the comments below, but remember to be nice, because I'm nice. So let's be nice on the internet. All right, I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.